The Hebron massacre refers to the killing of 67 or 69 Jews on 24 August 1929 in Hebron, then part of Mandatory Palestine, by Arabs incited to violence by rumors that Jews were planning to seize control of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The event also left scores seriously wounded or maimed. Jewish homes were pillaged and synagogues were ransacked. Many of the 435 Jews who survived were hidden by local Arab families. Soon after, all Hebron's Jews were evacuated by the British authorities. Many returned in 1931, but almost all were evacuated at the outbreak of the 1936–39 Arab Revolt in Palestine. The massacre formed part of the 1929 Palestine riots, in which a total of 133 Jews and 110 Arabs were killed, and brought the centuries-old Jewish presence in Hebron to an end. The massacre, together with that of Jews in Safed, sent shock waves through Jewish communities in Palestine and around the world. It led to the reorganization and development of the Jewish paramilitary organization, the Haganah, which later became the nucleus of the Israel Defense Forces. In the meta-narrative of Zionism, according to Michel Campos, the event became a central symbol of Jewish persecution at the hands of bloodthirsty Arabs and was engraved in the national psyche of Israeli Jews, particularly those who settled in Hebron after 1967. Background: simmering tensions. The city of Hebron holds special significance in Islam and Judaism, it being the site of the tomb of the patriarchs. In 1929, the population numbered around 20,000, the majority of whom were Muslim Arabs. A small community of around 700 Jews, consisting of a few dozen inside Hebron and a majority that rented houses from Arab proprietors on the outskirts, also lived there. The Jewish community was divided between recent Ashkenazi immigrants and an older population of descendants of Sephardim who had inhabited the town. For centuries, Ashkenazi Jews had been established in the town for at least a century. The two communities, Sephardim and Ashkenazi, maintained separate schools, worshipped in separate synagogues, and did not intermarry. The Sephardim were Arab speakers, wore Arab dress and were well integrated, whereas many of the Ashkenazi community were yeshiva students who maintained foreign ways, and had difficulties and misunderstandings with the Arab population. Since the Balfour Declaration of 1917, tensions had been growing between the Arab and Jewish communities in Palestine. The Muslim community of Hebron had a reputation for being highly conservative in religion, though Jews had suffered numerous vexations in the past, and this hostility was to take an anti-Zionist turn after the Balfour Declaration. Generally, a peaceful relationship existed between both communities. During the riots of 1920 and 1921, Hebron's Jews had been spared the violence that broke out elsewhere. In mid-August 1929, hundreds of Jewish nationalists marched to the Western Wall in Jerusalem shouting slogans such as "The wall is ours" and raising the Jewish national flag. Rumors spread that Jewish youths had also attacked Arabs and had cursed Muhammad. Following an inflammatory sermon the next day, hundreds of Muslims converged on the Western Wall, burning prayer books and injuring the beadle. The rioting soon spread to the Jewish commercial area of town, and the next day, August 17, a young Jew was stabbed to death. The authorities failed to quell the violence. The first murders of the day took place when 2 or 3 Arabs passing by the Jewish quarter of Mea Shearim were assassinated. Rumors that Jews had massacred Arabs in Jerusalem arrived in Hebron by that evening. Hillel Cohen frames his recent narrative of the incident in terms of the murder of the Jaffa Awin family by a Jewish police constable called Simcha Hinkish. Haganah offers protection. Former Haganah member, Baruch Katinka, recalled that he had been informed by his superiors that 10 to 12 fighters were needed to protect the Jews in Hebron. On August 20, a group traveled to Hebron in the middle of the night and met with the Jewish community leader, Eliezer Dan Slonim. Katinka said that Slonim was adamant that no protection was needed as he was on good terms with the local Arabs and he trusted the Ayan to protect the Jews. According to Katinka, Slonim postulated that the sight of the Haganah might instead cause a provocation. The group was soon discovered and Police Superintendent Raymond Kafarata, an officer recruited from the Black and Tans, ordered them to return to Jerusalem. 2 others remained in Slonim's house, but the day after, they too returned to Jerusalem as requested by Slonim. Hebron's police force was headed by Superintendent Raymond Kafarata of the Palestine Police Force and consisted of 2 Arab officers and another 40 policemen, only one of whom was Jewish. A number of the force were elderly and in a poor physical condition. Kafarata was later to explain that it was impossible to keep the situation under control, as he was the only British officer stationed in the town and reinforcements he had sent for never arrived. The Hebron police were greatly relieved on the morning of the 24th to note that a contingent of armed Arab locals had departed the city in order to lend strength to forces in Jerusalem. At the same time, however, a large number of peasants from surrounding villages began to flow into Hebron. Prelude. On Friday afternoon, August 23, after hearing reports of rioting in Jerusalem, a crowd of 700 Arabs gathered at the city's central bus station intending to travel to Jerusalem. Kafarata attempted to placate them, and as a precaution, asked the British authorities to send reinforcements to Hebron. He then arranged for a mounted patrol to be sent to the Jewish quarter, where he encountered Rabbi Yaakov Yosef Slonim, who asked for police protection after Jews had been attacked with stones. Kafarata instructed the Jews to stay in their homes, while he tried to disperse the crowds. Jewish newspaper accounts carried various claims by survivors that they had heard Arab threats to divvy up Jewish women, that Arab homeowners had told their Jewish neighbors, "Today will be the great slaughter," and that several of the victims took tea with so-called friends who, in the afternoon, became their killers. At around 4 p.m., stones were thrown through the windows of Jewish homes. The Hebron yeshiva was hit, and as a student tried to escape the building, he was set upon by the mob who stabbed him to death. The sexton, the only other person in the building at the time, survived by hiding in a well. Some hours later, Kafarata attempted to get the local muhtars to assume responsibility for law and order, but they told him that the mufti had told them to take action or be fined due to the Jewish slaughter of Arabs in Jerusalem. Kafarata told them to return to their villages, but expecting some disturbances, he slept in his office that night. The attack, the rampage and the killing at about 8:30 a.m. Saturday morning. The first attacks began to be launched against houses where Jews resided, after a crowd of Arabs armed with staves, axes and knives appeared in the streets. The first location to be attacked was a large Jewish house on the main road. 2 young boys were immediately killed, whereupon the mob entered the house and beat or stabbed the other occupants to death. Kafarata appeared on the scene, gave orders to his constables to fire on the crowd and personally shot dead 2 of the attacking Arabs. While some dispersed, the rest managed to break through the pickets, shouting, "Onto the ghetto!" Requested reinforcements had not arrived in time. This later became the source of considerable acrimony. According to a survivor, Aharon Reuven Bernsweig, right after 8 o'clock in the morning we heard screams. Arabs had begun breaking into Jewish homes. The screams pierced the heart of the heavens. We didn't know what to do. They were going from door to door, slaughtering everyone who was inside. The screams and the moans were terrible. People were crying, "Help! Help!" But what could we do? Soon after news of the first victim had spread, 40 people assembled in the house of Eliezer Dan Slonim. Slonim, the son of the rabbi of Hebron, was a member on the city council and a director of the Anglo-Palestine Bank. He had excellent relations with the British and the Arabs, and those seeking refuge with him were confident they would come to no harm. When the mob approached his door, they offered to spare the Sephardi community if he would hand over all the Ashkenazi yeshiva students. He refused, saying, "We are all one people," whereupon he was shot dead along with his wife and 4-year-old son. From the contemporary Hebrew press it appears that the rioters targeted the Zionist community for their massacre. 4/5 of the victims were Ashkenazi Jews, though some had deep roots in the town, yet a dozen Jews of Eastern origin, Sephardim and Maghrebi, were also killed. Gershon Ben Zion, for example, the Beit Hadassah clinic pharmacist, a cripple who had served both Jews and Arabs for 4 decades, was killed together with his family. His daughter was raped and then murdered, and his wife's hands were cut off. Account of Raymond Kafarata after the massacre. Kafarata testified, "On hearing screams in a room, I went up a sort of tunnel passage and saw an Arab in the act of cutting off a child's head with a sword. He had already hit him and was having another cut, but on seeing me he tried to aim the stroke at me, but missed. He was practically on the muzzle of my rifle. I shot him low in the groin. Behind him was a Jewish woman smothered in blood with a man I recognized as an Arab police constable named Issa Sheriff from Jaffa. He was standing over the woman with a dagger in his hand. He saw me and bolted into a room close by and tried to shut me out, shouting in Arabic, 'Your Honor, I am a policeman.' I got into the room and shot him." Account of Jacob Joseph Slonim. Rabbi Jacob Joseph Slonim, the Ashkenazi chief rabbi of Hebron, stated that after his Arab acquaintances had informed him that local hooligans intended to attack the Talmudical Academy, he had gone to ask for protection from District Officer Abdullah Qadis, but was denied an audience with him. Later on, after being attacked in the street, he had approached the chief of police, but Kafarata refused to take any measures, telling him that, "The Jews deserve it, you are the cause of all troubles." The next morning, Slonim again urged the district officer to take preventative measures, but he was told there was no ground for fear. "A great number of police is available. Go and reassure the Jewish population." 2 hours later, a mob incited by speeches started breaking into Jewish homes with cries of "Kill the Jews." The massacre lasted an hour and a half, and only after it had died down, did the police take action, firing shots into the air, whereupon the crowds immediately dispersed. Slonim himself was saved by a friendly Arab. Looting, destruction and desecration. The attack was accompanied by wanton destruction and looting. A Jewish hospital, which had provided treatment for Arabs, was attacked and ransacked. Numerous Jewish synagogues were vandalized and desecrated. According to one account, Torah scrolls and casings of silver and gold were looted from the synagogues, and manuscripts of great antiquity were pilfered from the library of Rabbi Judah Bibas. The library, founded in 1852, was partly burned and destroyed. In one instance, a rabbi who had saved a Torah scroll from a blazing synagogue, later died from his burns. Arabs shelter Jews. About 24 Arab families hid Jews in their homes. Aharon Reuven Burnsvig related that an Arab named Hajjaiser el-Cordier saved a group of 33 Jews after he insisted they hide in his cellar. There they waited with a deadly fear for the trouble to pass, worrying that the murderers outside would hear the little children who kept crying from the cellar. They heard cries of, "Today is a day that is holy to Muhammad. Anyone who does not kill Jews is a sinner." Meanwhile, several Arab women stood guard outside, repeatedly challenging the claims of the screaming mob that they were sheltering Jews. Yona Molchadsky gave birth while taking refuge in an Arab basement. Molchadsky later related that when the mob demanded that Arabs give up any Jews they were hiding, Her host told him, "We have already killed our Jews," whereupon the mob departed. The family of Abu Idzaitan rescued Zedmai Romani and other Jews by hiding them in their cellar and protecting them with their swords. They later found policemen to escort them safely to the police station at Beit Romano. Survivors, around 435 Jews, or two-thirds of the community, survived. Most were reportedly saved by Arab families, and around 130 saved themselves by hiding or by taking refuge in the British police station at Beit Romano on the outskirts of the city. Israeli historian Benny Morris has disputed the account that most survivors were saved by Arab families, writing that, in fact, most were rescued by British police intervention and by the fact that many Jews successfully fended off their assailants for long hours, though to be sure, Arab neighbors did save several families. After order had been restored, all the Jews were gathered at the British police station where hundreds of people were confined for 3 days, without food or water. They were also forbidden from making telephone calls. All the survivors were then evacuated to Jerusalem.